This weekend, I was in Lincoln. I went to Omaha, and then I went to Lincoln, and then I went back to Omaha, and then I came home. But I was in Lincoln at the Lead Center. My wife and I, we got dressed up, and we went and saw the Lincoln Symphony, Brahms' Second Symphony. They had a violin fiddle player that was good. And I felt like I was a class act, we got dressed up, we went out to dinner, and I wore a tie. It was the first time in a long time that I wore a tie like all day. Felt fancy. Felt, like I wasn't at some, thingamadoodle. I was at a big do, So it felt kind of like a class act, and had our dog, actually our dog's right here. That, you can show a picture of an adult and nobody says anything. You show a picture of a puppy, you've won the crowd. I can just stop now. This is Murray. That's my dog. We had, actually Allison's mother took care of him. And then we picked him up and brought him home. Still feeling, like we're classy. On the entire way home, I listened to nothing but classical music. The challenge was I had no idea the name of the stuff. It even said on the thing the name of the stuff, but it was like sonata thing, something with snot in it, and I couldn't remember what it was. But we were feeling, classy. Good day. Came home. We came home just enough time to be able to watch the football game. Things went well. It was great. It was a great game. Things were going very well for us. Stayed up a little late. But it was okay. Then went to bed. That's where my dog, Murray, decides to throw up. End of class right there. The worst part is that, when you're awake, when you're sitting, anybody have dogs out here? Who's had pets of any kind? Okay, so you're floating with me here. When you're there during the day, things are happening and stuff, and your dog starts doing that like hunchbacked thing, that with the weird noise going, and just something is happening that you do not want to happen in any way. And when you're awake and when you're home and you're in the living room or something, you find yourself trying to battle the elements by grabbing your dog and holding them as if you're doing a lateral pass and going to the front yard, praying that nothing is going to happen en route, because if it does, you have just spread the issue that's going on all over the place. But at night, when you're really tired and you're half asleep, the first thought that comes to your mind is, well, how bad could it be? I wonder if I could live with this. I wonder if I could actually wait 8 hours before I do something about this, which is a gross thing to do. And that's where bachelor days meant married days, because within seconds I was up cleaning this up. So obviously a difference of opinion, and so needless to say, it was cleaned up, and my dog was feeling better, but. The funny, yeah, exactly. It was terrible. The funny thing is that no matter that happened, no matter that I had this little emergency in the night, I woke up this morning and I saw my dog just sitting there. He's looking at me like I'm about to leave, and he's sad. And you go and you pet your dog, and you love your dog. You love him. No matter what happens, you love that dog. And no matter what happens too, I'm going to, as much as he rejected it, I'm going to feed him again today, and hoping that nothing will happen, but this is going to happen. I'm going to feed him. I'm going to water, give him water. I'm going to let him outside, possibly for a very long time today, but I'm going to care for him because why? Well, really, why do I care for him? He's a dog. But I guess it's because I love my dog. I guess for me, that dog, Murray, is a member of my family, and I care about that dog, and no matter what he does that disappoints me like he did last night, I still love that dog. And I will still start again every day. I will start again. Some days, he will do things that are, it's easy to dismiss the episode last night to, he got a hold of something. It wasn't his fault. He did the best he could. But there's sometimes when a dog does things that just, it's like they're doing it on purpose. Barking at people that come down the street when you tell them not to bark. And you find that as this person's walking down the street, they have pretty much the sound of two people barking at them because it's the dog barking at them and me barking at the dog, And so it's this battle, and the dog is basically ignoring me and saying, I don't really, care about what you're saying there. I'm going to continue to bark at this person that is obviously showing no threat whatsoever, just walking down the street. You come inside. You still love the dog. You still care about the dog. Even though that was irritating, even though they did something that just bugged you, you still care about the dog. Even, I'm going to tell you another one, and forgive me for being, this is just what happened. When I first got here, I was having some trouble with my heating unit. It kept breaking down. And so we had people come and look at the heating unit. Now, dogs do something that human beings, I am so thankful, do not do. It's the way they greet each other. We do a handshake, right? I don't care what's behind you, I'm just doing a handshake, But dogs, well, they want to sniff things. I don't know why. I've looked at journals. I have people we don't know why, but they do that. And they don't do it just to dogs. Sometimes they do it to people. So, I can't believe I'm telling this story, but there's a gentleman looking at my furnace. And in order to tell the furnace, he is lying on the ground. I guess you could call it with an eye view, and you see, you're over there and you're watching, your dog comes down, and you see what is about to happen. You don't want to yell, hey, don't do that. So you try to, discourage the dog as the person that is working on the furnace has no idea what's going on. And you're doing this battle thing and talking to him, but then you get distracted, and then like in slow motion, you see the dog going towards, and you find yourself doing this, no. And it happens. And you're embarrassed, and it's like, I don't know you. My dog obviously knows you better than I do, and we're just not going to talk about it. But you just, at that moment, you wish you had a cat, because cats don't care about anything. You just wish you had something other than a dog that would do this. But after a while, you find yourself that you're feeding that dog. You're giving that dog water. You still love that dog. You still enjoy that dog. You still find that face cute. You love that dog. You care for that dog. Why do you care for that dog? What does that dog give you? Well, that's hard to say. They're dependent on us. Murray is dependent on me. Without me, Murray would not really do much, He doesn't really give a lot in return other than just being himself. He gives appreciation, sure. But there's no monetary trade-off here. But yet I love this dog. I really love this dog. And I can't wait to do more good things for this dog. I go to the store, I pick up little things that I know he'll destroy. All because I love this dog. I have a dog because I love loving that dog. That's what we do. And put it into other context, we do the same with our children. That's my son right there. He decided to lift weights at an early age, and now he can bench press a truck. But I always tell him, no matter how old you get, I can still hit you with my car. So this is a little different. There's some things that they can give you back. You love and care for this child. You raised this child. But as we know, as any parent knows, as any child knows, there's friction sometimes. There's times when they do things that we don't want them to do. There's times when they just defy us. There's times when they go against everything that we want. And then we find time passes. We still love that child. We still do things for that child. We still continue to feed that child. We still continue to buy that child things to make sure that that child is clothed. We still do things for that child. And what do we really want in return for that? Have I tallied all the things that I have spent on my child, and someday I'm going to give him an enormous bill? No. What I really want is just love from that child. It's a mutual thing. I love loving that child, and that child loves me. And so the other stuff is really not important when you talk about just the basis, the core, which is love. And it happens with generations. It happens as we move on with our generations. My father raised me. His father raised him. I raised my son. That's the last time I could hold him, by the way. He got much bigger awfully fast. But as family members, we understand that we do things, even though sometimes it trips us up, even though sometimes it hurts us, sometimes it bothers us, sometimes it stresses us out. We still share something because we love our people. And the core of it really is that we just love loving. Otherwise, anybody that would have, a dog, for instance, I mean, I can tell you right now, that dog has cost me money. It's been an investment, but I love him. And I will go home today, and I will continue to care for that dog. It's easy to put it on that perspective. Now, remember, I'm very flawed myself. I'm going to love that dog. I'm going to love that son. I'm going to love everybody, but I'm going to do it flawed sometimes. I'm going to make mistakes. But each day, we get to start again. I cannot compare myself to God, for instance. If you look at the way that everything that I just talked about and compare that scale to what God is, well, we lose every time, don't we? In other words, if you say, well, I can build a doghouse. I made it out of wood, painted it. And then you can say, now God, you build a doghouse, and we'll compare and see which one's better. Chances are, that's going to be a nicer doghouse. Because whatever God gives is better. God has the wisdom to do it. God has the love to do it. He has the power to do that. He, in a sense, is our owners. We are, in a sense, the reason why I started with dogs rather than kids, because kids do grow up to have a knowledge. And they get to grow up and they get to be parents. So they get to pass on and put into practice what they have learned, and they get to become kind of the leader of their family, and it cycles through. With a dog, no matter how much I teach that dog, no matter how much I ingrain inside that dog, no matter how much wisdom that dog, he's still not going to completely understand who I am or why I do certain things. He has no idea that I left this morning and that I'm going to be in church and then I'll be back. That's why dogs act so surprised when you come back in 5 minutes. They think that you died and suddenly you're back again, and they just dance all over the place. They can conceive of certain things, But some things are out of their realm. Some things they just can't understand. Sometimes when I take my dog to the vet, for instance, and they get shots or I have to leave them overnight, my dog probably is wondering, what did I do wrong? Why has my owner abandoned me? Why has he gone away from this? Will he ever come back? And you can't explain it to him. I can't come back and say, well, now see, Murray, this is what happened. You had worms, we had to take care of it. And then you have to go into what worms are. All they know is that you left, you caused them some sadness, you caused them some physical pain. But they do know you love them. They continue to know that you love them. And the one thing that actually helps with dogs, the same with children, is the fact that they know that you love them makes sense to them so that when you do some things that they do not understand, they have that to fall back on. They don't get a lot of anxiety. Dogs are not in therapy right now because they know that I didn't understand that, but I do know that my owner loves me. I didn't understand that vet visit. I didn't understand why I was put in a cage like that. I don't understand why I gave the shot. All of those things hurt. That was almost traumatic, but I do know that guy loves me and that when he comes back, things are going to be okay. I do know that. And maybe that's the communication that we have that makes it available for us to be parents and to be people that own animals and to have that kind of underlying communication that when things go sour, there's a trust there. There's a trust at the very core that helps us go on. We are like the dogs. God does things in our lives that we will never understand. Sometimes we feel like we are the person that is put into that kennel or given that shot or left abandoned, and we don't know why. But we know God loves us. Sometimes we experience tragedy. Sometimes we experience loss. Sometimes we experience things that we didn't cause that have happened to us, and we don't know why that would happen, and we find ourselves with the cliche quotes saying, where was God when all of this happened? If God loved us, why wouldn't he do this? Because we do not understand, because in God's world, at best, we're dogs. We'll never fully understand that. The closest God gave us, the closest he gave us to understanding was Christ. Christ had only 3 years. 3 years on this earth to be in ministry, to say what he needed to say, to talk about the important things, to make sure that the people that were around him were writing it down, were making notes of it, that we could pass on the message and that we could have it today. The things that you read in the Bible, in the Gospels, are there for a very, very important reason. Nothing that Jesus said was just in passing. He was running out of time. 3 years, that's it. You'll notice that last week we were talking about where we were putting our finances, and God was saying, but if you build that barn, if you build it up, tonight I could actually call your soul and that could be taken away from you. Today's reading is actually a continuation from that. He's having the same conversation with the same people. He says, and then he said to his disciples, for this reason I say to you, do not worry about your life as to what you will eat, nor for your body as to what you will put on it. For life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. He's trying to stress to people that the focus that we have in the things we can really worry about. But if we understand who God is and what God supplies us with and the necessities that we actually need as opposed to the things that we just want, well, there's a big difference there. He continues. Consider the ravens. Again, he's actually, last time he picked sparrows, today he picks ravens. For they neither sow nor reap. They have no storeroom, no barn, and yet God feeds them. How much more valuable are you than birds? And then he puts a challenge to us as we would put to a dog. Same kind of level here. Which of you by worrying can add a single hour to their life? Which of you by worrying can add one single hour to your life? And then he kind of plays with us here. He says, if you cannot even do that very little thing, if you cannot even do that very little thing, then what good is it for you? He's saying that, look, you cannot even add an hour to your life. You don't get a pick when you get taken. You don't get a pick when God calls you home. You don't get to pick any of that stuff. We can exercise, we can do all this stuff. But by worrying, we cannot add another hour to our life. And God is saying, look, if you can't even do that simple thing, you see, God is saying, that's really easy for me. That is really, really easy. That's like saying to your dog, look, if you can't jump up on the counter and make lasagna, well, then what good is it going to do us? For us, it's easy. For us, we have all of the layers. But we're dogs when it comes to God. There's things that we're not getting. There's things that we're wasting our time worrying about. Then he says, Christ had the benefit of growing up poor. He had the benefit of growing up in an agricultural community, a fishing community. He was a laborer. His job was to go to places and help build things. He was a handyman. He was like Bill Carr. Bill, you go to different places all the time. You build things that they need. Sometimes you're working on a cabinet. Sometimes you're working on a front parking area. That's what Christ did. Christ was a laborer. The term carpenter, if you bring it down to the actual definition, it just means someone that works with their hands. And someone in Jesus' time from a very, very, very poor, insignificant town like Nazareth did not have the ability to pick one and say, I'm just going to work with wood. No, he went wherever they could. He knew what it was like to be poor. He knew how it was to get his hands dirty. He knew what it was like to actually be in situations where you actually worried about your next meal. And he's talking to people that are actually worried about their next meal. You see, we read this and we talk about, oh, don't worry about your food, don't worry about your clothes. Well, we got that. We're worried about other things. We're setting these enormous goals for ourselves, and we're worried about that stuff. And then when we accomplish that stuff, we set even higher goals, and we worry about that stuff. Christ at this time, 2,000 years ago, is actually speaking to people that really don't know where their next meal is going to come from. They really don't know if the Romans are going to come and annihilate them. The things that Christ is saying are not trivial. They're real stuff. And he's telling them, don't worry about it. Imagine what he's telling us. Put that on the level of Christ today. Would Christ come down and would the one thing on his agenda be, don't worry about your food? Or would he be adding something more to it? We worry a ton. We have anxiety so much that there are medications that we can take. There are counseling sessions we can take. There are things that we can do. Christ is saying, look at the dog. I got you covered. Look at the dog. I got you covered. And you know what? If tonight you throw up on me, I'm going to love you just as much. If tonight, if you bark at somebody when I tell you not to bark at that person, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to take care of you. I'm still going to be your owner that loves you. Christ said that said that God actually loves to love us. He loves to give us the kingdom of heaven. This is not something that is conditional where he's going like this and saying, look, hey, this means a lot to me. I'm not so sure you deserve it. He's actually saying, I really, really want to give this to you. And why? Well, why do I look forward to seeing my dog when I come home? It's just a matter of love. So the next time that we are putting things into worry, I invite you to put it into perspective and to acknowledge there are things that are above you. Acknowledge that there are things that we do not understand. Acknowledge that sometimes we do feel like the dog that just got the shot and is looking at the owner saying, "Why would you do that to me?" Acknowledge who God is. We cannot add an inch to our life, but for God, that's child's play. So there are things we don't have to worry about. Would you pray with me? Lord, we thank you for everything that you've given us. We do worry about things. We get anxiety about things. We think that things are our responsibility. Let us help us to define what is our responsibility. Some things are. Some things you are telling us that you need to step forward and you need to do something about this, or you need to move this way, or you need to give to that person. Help us to listen to you as a dog listens to its owner. Help train us to where we can rely on you and just do what you say. In Jesus' name, Lord, we pray. Amen. As soon as Christ was done telling them not to worry, he told them, "Give everything to the poor. Feed the clothed." Part of the things that we're not to worry about is because God puts us into action to take care of those people. People wonder why there's people starving in the world when we have enough food in the world to feed everybody. God has supplied us. He has supplied the ravens. It's time for the ravens to actually go and help spread that. That's where we go into action. That is where Christ is saying, worry about what I'm telling you. Don't worry about this stuff. Worry about where I'm calling you. Don't worry about this stuff. Worry about how much I love you. And then he says, because where your heart is, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. If your heart is focused on things, if your heart is focused on worry, if your heart is focused on that without love, you got a lot to worry about. It's grace that keeps us going.